Okay, I just wanted to wait a few minutes, see if anybody else was going to show up. So it's a few minutes after 2, so we'll get started. So welcome. My name's Amy. I am here today to talk about staying active at home. Hopefully I can bring up a few important elements of both staying active and also doing it at home now. First off, I guess an introduction. My name is Amy, and I'm a physiotherapist at the Hamilton Family Health Team. Part of my role as a physiotherapist is to help people be active, physically active. That can be really helpful for preventing and managing a lot of different health conditions. And then the other thing that it does is it helps people do the things that they want to be able to do. So those are some of the things that I do in my regular, everyday, kind of everything I do. That's part of it. And today, we thought this would be really helpful to have as a webinar, just to get people thinking, get people, share some resources, have some ideas. So let me go over what my goals are for today. First off, I want to discuss why exercise, why physical activity are important. Next, I want to go over some strategies to help you do that, to help you start being active or stay active even while you're at home. And then finally, I want to show you a couple resources so you have a few ideas of what's out there, maybe a place to get started, or even just to look, right? Just to know some of the things that people do. Okay, so technical concerns here. There is a chat function. Only I can see what you write me. So you feel free to ask me a question anytime through the chat. I am going to ask you a question later, and I want you, if you feel comfortable, to type some things in the chat, but I'm the only one seeing it, and I'm not going to say who said it or anything like that. But only if you want to, just in case we can get some crowdsourced ideas going too. If we do lose the connection, you can click the same link that you used in the first place. It'll still be here. And yeah, so I think that takes care of our technical things. So first of all, definitely anytime we talk about exercise or physical activity, we want to touch on safety. Obviously, I'm not meeting you. I don't know anything about your health condition, and everybody has their own specific needs and abilities. So it's important to think about that for yourself. It's not a one size fits all. So I am going to talk a little bit about how to know if you think there might be a safety issue. So one, maybe your doctor has told you should not exercise. Many doctors have probably also said that you should exercise. So you can take that as some instruction one way or the other. Of course, if your doctor has said it's not safe for you to exercise, then I'm not encouraging you to exercise. If you've had a new concern show up that you haven't discussed with your doctor, sometimes that's important to discuss first. So things on that front might be if you have new chest pain, or you find you're really short of breath with some of your usual activities like walking across the room. It's not that you can't exercise, it's that if it's new and not under control, we need to know what's going on before exercise is a good idea. So those are some of the things that I can tell you about exercise. There is a tool out there, and it's a Canadian tool, to help you decide if exercise is safe. So I'm going to show you that. I'm going to share my screen so you can see it. It's called the PAR-Q+. So that stands for Physical Activity Readiness, and the plus means that it's a new version, like it's gone through, it gets updated regularly. So sometimes that can help you decide if you do need to talk to your doctor before you take on exercise. So let me show you that. I'm going to share that. So hang on while I get it. Here it is. I think you can see that now. So this is the PAR-Q+, and you can look that up, or I'm going to write the website for you down at the end as well, but eparmedx.com, and that should get you here. It explains it. There's lots of different things on this website, but there's this little button down here at the bottom. Take the PAR-Q+ survey now. Okay, so that will then ask you a few questions, and based on your answers, give you a suggestion about if you should talk to your doctor or if it's okay to go ahead. I am going to give you a few tips about safety otherwise throughout the discussion today too, so stay tuned. The other thing to think about is, where am I doing an activity? So if I have balance issues, then maybe I want to think about doing things sitting, or can I do it holding on to a counter is a great place, a stable surface. So that's another way you can think about it. It's also, you can adjust your environment to make it more safe for you. So there's a couple factors there. Okay, so that is the safety, main part of the safety discussion. So I think it's important to start off with saying, what is exercise? What is physical activity? And I'm going to add a third one: what is movement? I think of these three things on a spectrum, so on a bit of a sliding scale. Exercise, sometimes I say that word and that's very intimidating. That comes to, I picture, gym, heavy running, really intense exercise, right? So sometimes when we say exercise, we're like, oh wow, lifting weights, and that's fair. That is part of exercise. Then we also have physical activity. Some people use these interchangeably. We could say that there's a bit of a difference. And then we also have movement, because you need to move to be able to do the other two. So we've got a few things here. When you're thinking about, is exercise safe for me? One thing in movement, there are definitely some movements that are safe for you, right? We have to move to do lots of things in our day. So one important thing to think about is, how can I move more, even if it's for a few seconds at a time? This is especially important now that we're at home. So I don't know who's found that they're sitting a lot more than usual because you're at home. So it is important, if you find you're in the same position for a long time, you're not really moving, try to move every half hour. So even if that's a little bit of shoulder circles, shoulder shrugs, maybe you march in your seat, or maybe you get up to get a glass of water. So it doesn't have to be a long break, but I like to, many physios too, like to call these movement breaks. So you got to think of taking a break from being still. And that can be small, or it can be big. Some people like to jump up and do jumping jacks. So thinking about what's right for you. So we have movement, and there are lots of benefits to that as well. Physical activity, and exercise. Let's go to exercise. I'm jumping around a bit here. Exercise, like I mentioned before, makes you think of the gym, makes you think about an activity like running. Exercise tends to be structured, and the action that you're doing, the goal of it is to work out, is to exercise and to really work on your body systems. Physical activity can look a lot like exercise, but you could argue that it might have a different focus. So one example is, I'm physically active when I'm gardening. My main goal isn't necessarily to sweat and use my muscles, but I'm definitely doing that, right? The main goal is to make a garden, maybe grow some tomatoes. So that's one way you could look at it. We are active in lots of different ways that aren't necessarily exercise. Another example is walking. So walking could be exercise if you do it just for the purpose of fitness, but walking is also a pretty good way to be active when you're doing something else. So if you walk to the store, or many people walk as part of their commute, or to do errands, things like that. So I find that physical activity is a great way to start. So either movement or physical activity breaks it down a little bit. It doesn't have to be as intimidating as the gym, or really heavy, further along exercise. I don't already have to be good at it. I can go for like a walk for a minute, and that's a good activity as well. That also, I think, helps you think about, it gives you a way to think about, what do I already do? Many of us are active already, even if we don't technically exercise. So if you're wondering about safety, you can think about something that you already do that feels comfortable to you, but that includes activity. So one example is, many people have to walk, down the street a bit to get to their mailbox, or like I said, maybe to run an errand. So you usually, I walk around the store. So that would be, you could think about, well, now that takes me 5 minutes. That takes me, maybe the mailbox only takes you a couple minutes, and maybe the store takes you longer. So that is something you already do. So then maybe you can add it in an extra time. I'm not saying go to the store an extra time, because right now we're going less often. But, if you think, oh, I can walk, reasonably comfortable at the store, 10 minutes, then maybe you can try a walk in your neighborhood for a couple minutes or 10 minutes even. But you can use that as a baseline. You can use that as a gauge of where I could start pretty comfortably. Same with the mailbox. So maybe that means maybe I don't have to walk to the mailbox twice, but maybe I could walk on the weekend as well, even though I don't usually do it. So I could add it in an extra time of the week. Okay. Another, I think, intimidating thing about exercise is it is recommended by Canadians, of the physical activity guidelines for Canada are to get 150 minutes of activity per week. That sounds like a big number. So let's break it down a little bit. I'm not going to talk about that this is how you get 150 minutes, but I'd like you to think about it even in 10-minute chunks. And even if 10 minutes seems a lot right now, start smaller. Start whatever you're doing and do you know, if it's in 1 or 2 minute chunks, then we can build. 10 minutes is a good rule of thumb because we do get some of the health benefits if we're active for 10 minutes. And also it adds up. If you can do 10 minutes this week, within a couple weeks, maybe you can do 15 minutes, maybe you can do 20. And again, they don't even have to be together. They could be at different times of the day, different days of the week. So definitely a couple minutes more than last week is better than 0. So that's one other way to think about it. And also at this time of year in the spring, we often overdo it, right? You go outside, it's so lovely. Oh, I'll walk. And you end up walking longer than you have since maybe last fall. Or the garden, I mentioned the garden once already. A lot of people end up in the garden and before they know it, many hours have gone by. And then the next day, wow, maybe even that night, everything hurts, everything's sore. Can't do much of anything for quite a few days. So 10 minutes, and I agree, gardening, you might need to do more than 10 minutes at a time to get something done, but you can break it down and those are still helpful. Okay, so it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. It doesn't have to be the whole 150 minutes at a gym. It can be 10 minutes in your garden. Next question, how hard should I work? That's a really good question. Relates to safety as well, because of course the harder I work, the more demand I'm placing on my body systems. So you can always start off working at the easiest level. Figure out how that is for you, and then you can build from there. So you can build in time, or you can build in amount of effort. So just a simple way to think about it, let's break it into light effort, medium effort, hard effort. A really great way to tell which how much effort you're using is how easy it is to talk. So if I'm doing light work, so that might be, like I said, maybe it's marching in my chair, just lifting my legs up, or maybe just doing some arm movements, right? So for me, and it's different for everybody, but for me, this is light movement. I can talk just the same as if I weren't doing this. And in fact, I could sing. I'm not going to sing, but I could. I have enough breath that I could sing. So that's one way you can say, okay, I think this is a light effort for me. Next up would be medium. So that for me might be walking, might be some things in the garden, but we start to see that our breath is coming a little bit faster. I'm not out of breath by any means. I can still talk. So we often hear about the talk test. I can still carry on a conversation, but you might, if we're talking, you might hear me take a few extra breaths. So I might not be able to get a whole sentence before I need a breath. I might be able to get half a sentence, okay? So it's still not like huffing and puffing, but it's definitely more challenging than just normal talking. We might start sweating, we might start getting warm as well. And then finally, hard effort. So this is people who exercise, you have to practice at exercise before you can really work at the really hard effort. And even if you get there, we don't tend to stay there too long. So here is where we can't carry on a conversation much anymore. We should be able to get words out, but we definitely can't keep up the rhythm of the sentence. We'd be sweating a lot, we'd be getting really hot, and we definitely can't last there very long. So in general, we want to aim mostly at the medium effort, but like I said, if you're not sure, you can start at the light effort and progress your way up. As you get used to an activity, sometimes it's easier to work a little bit harder. So that's my little advice on how hard you should work or can work. Great. That's all well and good. We've talked a lot. We've talked about, you know, how much. We've talked about, you know, the differences between different kinds of activities. But if we don't have motivation, that doesn't really add up to too much, does it? Well, that is definitely the million-dollar question. Motivation is probably the number one thing I hear. Well, we can set up a lot of things, but I don't really have the drive. It's not something that I'm that interested in doing. And that is definitely a tough one. I've heard a speaker talk about motivation. I thought it was really interesting that actually motivation doesn't come first. You usually have to do something and then you might find some motivation. And I like this idea. So you can, I think when I was planning this, I thought about going to the dentist. I'm not very motivated to go to the dentist, but I set an appointment and so I go. I show up and I know it's good for me. And so that if I didn't set an appointment, I don't know how long it would take me to go. So that's one way you can think about it. You could schedule this first, right? Try something. It's always good to pick something you enjoy. That definitely helps. Like if you're interested or if it's something that, you know, you're curious about, you want to learn something new, sometimes that's a way to, you know, kind of break some of those barriers down and get you started. And you may find if you schedule it, then you start to look forward to it, and the motivation may come later. So I think that's a really good tip to let you get started even before you have a really big drive to do it. Of course, there are lots of other things we can do to try to help us get there. One you're already doing is learning about activity. So as we talk about it, everybody's, you know, wheels are turning. You may find, oh, that makes sense to me, or that's something I haven't thought of, that maybe I could do that, right? So sometimes talking to people or learning about exercise and activity, sometimes those things help you find a reason. And that's really important because really it's your reason. I could tell you 5 reasons, I could tell you way too many reasons to exercise, but if it's not important to you, then it doesn't really help. We're going to try and exercise now. And this is where I'd love for you to participate if you feel like it. I want to hear about maybe some of the pros and cons of activity or exercise. So I'm going to write them down. I'm going to share my screen again and we'll write as we go, but you can write in the chat and that way we can see, well, no one else will see the chat, but then I can write it in the chart. And no one even has to know who said it. So sometimes this is a great way to weigh your options. Like, is this a good idea for me or not? And it doesn't mean you have to exercise just because you see the chart. It's just a place to start. So I forgot I have to share first. I was looking at it myself. So let's share my screen again. And we are going to brainstorm some ideas, pros and cons of exercise. So here we are. Should I be physically active? Pros and cons. So go ahead and you can absolutely, I just want to make sure I can see the chat here. You can write in the chat. Don't think you can see, yeah. Okay, so go ahead and write in the chat and let me know, because you can't see my Zoom, you can only see what I'm choosing to share. Yeah, so go ahead. I will say some of my own, and then as I see things, I will add things as well. Definitely some of the things I hear a lot on the con side, sometimes this is the easier side to start on, is that I don't have the energy. It's not enough energy. Another one I hear is I don't have time. Well, okay, here from myself, don't have time, right? And then, but I will be honest with you guys, on the pro side for me, got to try to even them out a little bit, is it helps me sleep. So some days when I haven't done anything active, sometimes I think about, ooh, I haven't done anything a couple days. I know I'm probably not going to sleep well, or I haven't been sleeping well. So sometimes that's what gets me out the door. And I know this is counterintuitive. This is going to be on both sides. Exercise helps you have more energy. Gives me more energy. Sometimes in the long run, sometimes in the short term. So for a lot of people, and this is another one for me these days, is that it helps me deal with stress. It helps me make a break in my day. So you know, structures my day, gives me a schedule. Just gives me a break from, you know, everything else I'm doing at home, or the stresses of any life stresses, or lately news stresses. So those are some of the things. Also, everybody has different health issues that they want to work on, but we know that exercise is really good for many, many health conditions. So it's really good for, helps prevent heart conditions. It's a general way to say it. Yeah, definitely. And in today's world, it's also really important. It helps boost your immune system. Definitely there are more cons now. I've let the pro side win. So there are definitely more downsides for a lot of people. And this is one of the things that I've already talked about, is I don't know what to do. So it's hard to have an idea. It's hard to, you know, if it's not in your usual habit already, it's really hard to think of what you could be doing. And I know different times in my life I felt embarrassed to get started because I don't know what to do. Don't want to look like I don't know what I'm doing, say at the gym, or, you know, if I do want to go for a hike or something. So it could be embarrassing to get started. So there are so many things you can put on this list, and they are unique to you. I'm going to add one more to the pro side because I think this one's really interesting. It can help with self-esteem. It can boost how good you feel about yourself. You can be, excuse me, you can be proud that you went out and did something active. I think that that's one thing. Also, some people work on something so they achieve a goal. That's another way that you can build your self-esteem through exercise. So this list can be infinite, and it's kind of a neat tool you could come back to. You can, it's pretty easy, set up a pro con chart, and you might have to do that different times. Everybody has different things that get them interested in exercise. So that's one tool you can use to examine maybe what's on the one side, why would you be interested? And then you can look at the con side and you can try to problem solve. So it gives you a great starting point. How can I get started is always the hardest question. Well, we can look at each item on your own pro and con list and start from there. So that's one of the things that can help you. And like I said before, learning about activity and exercise is also one. So I guess I should have kept sharing my screen. I want to show you a little video. You may have seen it. It's been around for a few years now, so this is also a Canadian source. You may have heard of Dr. Mike Evans. He has a great series of videos on health issues. Yeah, I'll just say health issues. And yeah, so his videos are really fun to watch. We're just going to watch the start of one. So I'm going to share my screen again, and it's going to be on for just under 3 minutes, just so you know. I am coming back. Okay, so let's get that video. So I know it's on the ParQ Plus, but it's in the same thing. So this is the Mike Evans video, and he has a YouTube channel. So I'll make it full screen, and we'll get it started.
Hi, Dr. Mike Evans, and welcome to this visual lecture I'm calling 23.5 hours. So I have a big interest in preventive medicine, which can mean a lot of things from, cancer screening to eating more fiber to having a good social network. And I mean that in the old sense of the word. Weighing less, drinking less, smoking less, controlling your blood pressure, cholesterol, and so on and so forth. So all these things are incredibly important, and I wouldn't want you to minimize your efforts in any one category, but I want to know what comes first. What has the biggest impact? What is the biggest return on investment? What makes the biggest difference to your health? So I did my research, and I found an answer, at least for me, and it's tricky because, all these things are sort of overlapping. But I picked out this intervention, and because of its breadth, it worked for so many different health problems, and that's what I found so cool about it. So just to kind of walk you through a quick list. So this intervention in patients with knee arthritis who receive 1 hour of treatment 3 times a week reduced their rates of pain and disability by 47%. In older patients, it reduced progression to dementia and Alzheimer's by around 50%. For patients at high risk of diabetes and coupled with other lifestyle interventions, it reduced progression to frank diabetes by 58%. Postmenopausal woman who had 4 hours a week of the treatment had a 41% reduction in the risk of hip fracture. It reduced anxiety by 48% in a big meta-analysis. Patients suffering from depression, 30% were relieved with low dose, and that bumped to 47% as we increased the dose. Following over 10,000 Harvard alumni for over 12 years, those that had the intervention had a 23% lower risk of death than those who didn't get the treatment. It's the #1 treatment of fatigue, and of course, the kind of outcome of choice there, my favorite outcome is quality of life, which is really all of the above and really about making your life better. And this treatment has been shown over and over again to improve quality of life. So the question is, what's the medicine and what is 23.5 hours? So the medicine was exercise, mostly walking, so not triathlons. And let me just put it a different way. I think what I'm asking you to do is, if you think about your typical day, so there's 24 hours, and so you might spend most of your day, this varies obviously, but couch surfing, sitting at work, obviously sleeping. And what the evidence that I'm going to show you kind of tells me is the best thing you can do for your health is to spend half an hour being active, maybe an hour, and that if you can do that, you can realize all the benefits I've described in the previous slide. So let's just take a quick walk through some.
I'm going to stop there. The whole video is great, but I would think that captures the main part that I wanted to look at this time. So he brought up even other reasons that I didn't touch on that might be important to you. So it is pretty neat concept that exercise, activity, walking, it is a great treatment for many health conditions. So he talked about hip fracture. Exercise, weight-bearing exercise helps improve your bone density or helps manage it. He talked about a lot of mood things. We're going to touch on these, like anxiety and depression. And then, of course, the ones we know very well, the heart health and diabetes too. So exercise can be a way to help manage your blood sugar. So it's pretty amazing when you think about it. And he broke it down into a half an hour, and definitely that is a good goal. But like I said, even if we start with a couple minutes, 10 minutes, and he breaks it into, you can spread your half an hour out into different 10-minute chunks too. So it's a pretty neat video that you can watch the rest of it if you're interested. So next up, I want to talk a little bit more about all these systems. So why is it that exercise can help with all those things? So I'm just going to touch on them briefly, tell you a little bit about what's happening in the body, in the brain, in your nervous system, when you exercise or when you move. Yeah, so hopefully that'll be interesting. And also sometimes that, again, another way it gets the wheels turning, helps you learn about this stuff and figure out what makes sense to you. If we understand it, it tends to have a better impact as well. So let's talk first about the tissues, because I think this is the logical part that we all think of when we exercise, my muscles. So if I exercise, I'll have stronger muscles. Absolutely, that's one thing that happens, including your heart. Your heart is a muscle. So these things, we can build muscle, we can get stronger, so our muscles can do more, they can last longer, lots of good things. One other way to think about it is that, and this relates to that energy question, I don't have enough energy to exercise because it is tiring, but in the long run, I'll get exercise, I'll get energy if I am active on a regular basis. So how does that happen? Well, our muscles get stronger, our heart gets more efficient. Basically, a lot of our body systems become more efficient with practice. So exercising one time isn't going to help, which is also why it's good to break it into smaller bits over time, so it's not just once and then I have to pass out for days, like the spring gardening, spring cleaning. So if our body starts to get more efficient, we can do the same thing, gets easier. So if you think about right now I have a lot of stairs I have to do just to move around in the space I'm in, but if I live somewhere without any stairs would get a lot harder sooner. So if I'm doing it regularly, I get better at it. And if I don't do it very often, actually, it gets harder to do. So that's one thing that happens to our tissues. We get better at exchanging the oxygen. We can just deliver more energy to the parts where we need it. We also have our nervous system, the nerves in our body and in our brain. So we need the nerves to use the muscles. That's how we know to lift our arm up, things like that. And we have lots of these connections in our brain as well. This is really important because movement and specifically activity it uses a lot of connections. A lot of things have to fire, a lot of things have to happen. And this is actually a really helpful thing for our body. Exercise can also build new connections. So in that video, he mentioned Alzheimer's and dementia. So that's one of the reasons exercise can be helpful for delaying the onset or I know it doesn't undo changes, but it can help slow some of those processes down so we can keep different parts of our brain active and build some new connections too. So that can be really helpful for lots of other things too. So the changes in the nervous system, sometimes it's a great way to manage pain. So people who are experiencing pain, again, that's a little bit like energy, where maybe in the short term, it can be a little painful. And I am going to give you a bit of a recipe for that too. But in the long run, it may be helpful. So I'm not encouraging you to just work past any issues. I will give you a little recipe on that too. Okay, so also what's happening in the brain, we talked about anxiety, we talked about depression. Exercise and activity can help us release more of those chemicals that improve our mood. So those feel-good chemicals, the endorphins. This can be really helpful in the short term. We might feel it in the moment, but it also in the long run, our body gets a little bit better at producing those kinds of chemicals, which when we've been experiencing a mood issue for the longer haul, not just a couple of days of maybe low mood, but maybe that's been going on for a little while. Exercise is one of the ways we can help stimulate that process. So anxiety and stress, also, there's definitely things happening in the brain, like I just explained, but also it's just common sense. If it's a break, like I said before, for me, it's a break in my day, so that if I'm overwhelmed by things that are going on, I just take even 10 minutes to go for a walk, and I'm able to release some of that stress. So for me, it definitely is a stress management tool. Sometimes it's that interruption, so that sometimes when you're exercising, you're being active, thinking more about your body, you're thinking more about the action you're doing instead of all the other things that are going on. Maybe all your thoughts are kind of racing. So you can take a break and do something else. And that also, I think, connects us to mindfulness, which I think this is an important point with exercise. If you've heard of the term mindfulness, maybe it's a little different than meditation, but mindfulness, I would suggest that one of the ways I like to think about it, is being mindful is a way that I can pay attention to my body, maybe to my environment, without judgment. So noticing what's going on, not stressing about it, just noticing. And activity, movement, even just movement. Movement is a great one for this, maybe the best one. Where I just take that minute, take that 30 seconds, maybe I take longer, and I might notice. So if I'm just doing a movement, I notice how it feels, right? I'm not worried about, is there a better movement, or am I doing it right? I'm just moving and I'm observing, what does it feel like to me? Does it feel good? Just lots of different things. You can observe what it feels like. And mindfulness is a great tool for relaxation, for dealing with stress. It's also a way that we can build some of those different brain connections as well. So it's a great way to help calm our systems down. And I think it's one of the other benefits of activity and exercise. Okay. So I hope that wasn't too overwhelming. I think hopefully it's a nice balance between learning about some of the body systems, but not digging too deep into one over the others. And that brings me to, I think, my last main point before we get into more of an activity. We are at home a lot more. And that can be challenging for so many reasons. Many of us, our routines are really different, and it's harder to have structure to our day. So that's also a reason that activity can be helpful. It might bring some routine. For me, it is that daily walk, even if it's only a couple minutes, just like around the block. I'm finding that quite helpful. The other thing is, you may have noticed, being home, I definitely notice I sit a lot more than I usually do. I usually have to walk a bit to get to work, or I ride my bike to work, and I don't do that. And also, as a physiotherapist, I'm up and down a lot at work. And now I do it all from my chair. So I'm sitting a lot more, and it's time in the day spent sitting. It's okay, that's life. We have to do a lot of sitting, but like I said before, we should take breaks from it. So we should be getting up, we should even be moving in our chair, but also now that we're at home a lot, we're not getting in that unplanned physical activity that just is, oh right, I have to go to the bank, so I even have to get in my car and I have to get up and down from that seat, which takes effort. I have to walk into the bank from wherever I parked. Maybe I'm at the store, I have to walk around the store. A lot of those things aren't happening, or at least not as often. And I don't know about you, but my phone likes to tell me about that. It says, you're walking less this month than you did last year around this time, or you're walking less this week than you did last week, or at least at the beginning. So the difficulty is we're doing less, we're actually doing less in general. We're doing less of that unplanned activity, which it's amazing how much we take for granted that's where most of our activity is getting from. So these days, in the past 2 months, I'd say instead of people adding 10 minutes more, we're taking away even more than 10 minutes per day of our usual activity levels. So it's even more important to try to add some back in, and you'll have to do it a bit more intentionally than we usually do. I mentioned before how some things do get harder when we don't have to do them. So that's another factor that we should consider. Our usual activities might have already become harder. So if we can do some work and it might be different than our usual activities, hopefully we can keep some of that strength and we can keep some of that capacity in our bodies, so that when we do go back and we're out more, it's not overwhelmingly difficult. Yeah, so let's talk about how maybe we can add that into our day or into our week. So we're going to break that down a little bit. I'm going to go back to share you my screen again. And this is something you can follow along, but you can also absolutely do this on your own. So we're gonna move to, instead of should I be physically active, it's more the how to. Okay, so I am gonna start this from a slideshow now though. Start from the beginning. Here we are. So that's what we talked about before. So next up, we're gonna set some goals. Important thing with goals is that they are specific and they're realistic. If they're not specific, if it's just, I'll exercise more, I don't really know what that looks like. And then realistic, I got to make sure it's something that I think I'm capable of and that I can get done. So I'm going to give you even more tools for how to look at that, how to consider that. So step one, what am I going to do? So I said before, it should be something that you enjoy, should be something that you think you can do. So I've talked about gardening, I've talked about walking, exercises in a chair. It could be those movement breaks I talked about. It could be stretching. And then I love this idea. It could be a dance break. Maybe that would be way more enjoyable than going for a walk or something like that. Maybe you love music. So you can think about your what, and then let's see what's next. Step two, when. So you can think about when you're going to do it. Like my example, I like to walk towards the end of my day. So maybe in the late afternoon, early evening. But that's different for everybody. And it might not be an everyday activity. It might be a certain day of the week, because you can have different goals as well. So we've talked about what and we've talked about when. Next up, how much? This is a good question. This is definitely the realistic part, I think. So how much? It can look a few different ways. So one is we talked about effort. So how hard am I working? Light, medium, or hard, right? So for me, when I'm going on a walk, it's between light and medium, depending on, how the day goes. I could be more specific. You'll see, I've written it down as a goal afterwards. But the other thing is how much, like we said. I don't want to do so much that I'm overwhelmed and I can't do much of anything else for a couple days. So I suggest that you think about, what do I do already and it seems manageable? So manageable would be, okay, I don't feel too bad during, it might be hard work, but I don't feel, like I don't get any pain shooting sky high, or I don't feel like I can barely make it through. But it might be hard work. That's okay. If it does go sky high, then maybe that is a bit too much. Maybe you're aiming a little too high at this stage. And then for how long? So again, it might be difficult, but you should be able to return to how you felt before within an hour or two. You might have to sit down, take it easy for a bit, but it shouldn't wreck your night. It shouldn't wreck your next day. So that's one way you can think about where to start. Okay, so let's take my walking goal that I've mentioned a few times now, and let's see what that might look like based on this little recipe. So I will walk for 10 minutes, 7 days a week at light effort in the afternoons. Seems pretty reasonable, but you can ask yourself, am I going to get this done? And so I want you to think about how confident you are that you could do this goal next week. But I'm asking me because it's my goal. Your goal could look different. So honestly, if I look at this goal, I'm going to say, I don't even think, well, maybe let's say I'm 50-50. I'm 50% confident that I'll get it done. And that is not that's not confident enough. So be specific and realistic. If you're not 70% confident that you can achieve this goal in the next week, change it so that you are. So for me, I know myself, the sticking point was definitely the 7 days a week. I'm not going to do that 7 days a week. That's just, I know there's going to be a day that I'm not going to want to go because of the weather, or I'm not going to feel like it. And for me, it was more of a work day strategy too. So if I changed this and gave myself a little bit of wiggle room, I would change it to I'll walk for 10 minutes, 4 days a week. So that gives me that little bit of wiggle room. And then my confidence goes up to about 90% with this one. So I'm even extra confident. So that is a much better goal for me. So your goals are always changeable as well. And of course, if this gets too easy, you can always make a harder goal. Okay, so that's one way you can think about setting goals. You can also, it helps you plan around some of those things that get in the way, like weather, like I said, or maybe you want to find someone to do it with. Okay, so I think that's right. The next thing I'm going to show you are those couple resources that I mentioned. Oh, and the other thing I should say is once you do have a goal, some people really like to track it. So I could even mark on my calendar with a W all the days that I went for a walk so that I know I am achieving my goal. So I think I'm going to have to stop the share and do a new share. Okay. So here we have, we're not going to watch the video again, but I'm going to show you a couple resources. So a lot of people, when they're getting started with exercise, they need a guide or they need to learn some exercises. So this is the YMCA. This is specific to Hamilton, Burlington, Brantford, but it's also the national website has these videos as well. In fact, there's also a YouTube channel. So here we have small videos. I think they range from 10 minutes to 20 minutes or so. Things that you can do at home and you can follow along. They have lots of different themes. They have ones for kids. They have ones in the chair. This is a great one, 15 minutes in the chair. I like to do this one at work sometimes. They have some balance focused ones. They have lots of different ones. So you don't even have to do the video. Maybe you just want to watch it and find one action that you're like, oh, I could do that as a movement break. Or maybe you want to watch it first to see, is this good for you? So that's a great thing about the videos. And these are free. So that's one resource. And then the other one I was going to show you is this, it's from Pain BC, and they have some videos on gentle movement you can do at home. So these might be nice ones to follow along and incorporates more of that mindfulness. There are sessions you can register for, but their YouTube channel, access recordings from previous home sessions, their YouTube channel has a number of videos as well. So this YouTube channel thing's really taken off. Okay, so I did want to write down those websites for you. So I will share, maybe I'll leave that on at the very end, and it'll list those different websites, all the ones that I mentioned today. So the last thing I just want to say is that it in addition to tracking how often you did your goal, you can also think about increasing things, but you always want to do it in small bits. So I've mentioned that a few times. If you can do 2 minutes, maybe the next week. So we generally say you could, once you get it down a few times and you're successful, then you could think about adding a bit, but we really only add about 10% at a time. So if you're walking, 2 minutes to the mailbox and back, doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're going to walk 10 minutes. You might just try to walk, 2 houses past your mailbox and back, right? So just adding a little 10% extra, roughly, right? So if my goal was 10 minutes of walking, I might just add a minute at a time. I'm not going to double it or add 5 minutes. So those are, I hope those are a few interesting things maybe about activity that you learned, or maybe a resource that looked interesting, and just gives you an avenue to kind of look down and see what is good for you. So please do, I haven't seen any questions yet, but please do ask any questions in the chat, and I can see them and I can address them. And I'm going to put up, I don't think I have anything else to say. Of course, please, we're so happy that people have noticed these different webinars, and you can always go to the website and see what else is on offer. Let's see, I am going to share with you those resources. So let me just say thank you for coming out. Thanks for listening. And yeah, please do ask any questions. So here are those resources that I've now mentioned so many times. Okay, so we'll go to that. So that's the safety, the PAR-Q Plus. Then we have that video, Dr. Mike Evans. It's just a way to look it up. The YouTube link is quite long. This is the Why site. This is the Hamilton one, whywearehere.ca/body. Why Thrive is also where those videos are. And then we have painbc.ca and gentle movement at home. So while, oh, maybe I can't have those resources up. I guess not. So, oh, I can. So we do have a poll. We want to hear what your thoughts are, how you found us, how you found the session. So I am going to launch the poll. So just take a look and do your best to answer these questions. Yeah, we love to hear any of your feedback. Okay, so thanks for doing that questionnaire as well. And I'm going to leave it there and say I wish you a good day, and hopefully you can find 10 minutes for activity. Okay, all right, take care. Thank you.